Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Generator Founder Series Spotlight. I'm Troy Vossler, co-founder of Generator, and today I'm joined by Meg Rodriguez, founder and CEO of Even. Welcome, Meg.
Man, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Meg was just giving me shit that it's taking me too long to invite him, but here we are. Better late than never.
Right.
All right, first question. Let's start by introducing yourself, give a little bit about your background, and tell us about the company. What is Even? What does it do? What's the genesis behind Even?
Let's do it. Well, one, again, thank you for having me. Two, I started my career straight out of high school. I was a producer turned manager. Two of my classmates were incredible artists. One of them essentially signed a record label or signed to a record label when we were in high school. And then the second one, I went on to just, become a full-time manager straight out of high school. And I did that for about 6, 7 years. And then I met Joe and Troy at Generator, and they're like, "Hey, we want to do some music stuff." And I was thinking about this recently because I feel like I tell this story, but I skip so many steps, like when I do the high level like interviews with folks. But we got introduced through Jordan Lee initially.
Yeah, 88.9.
Yeah, when you guys started working with 88.9, Jordan had reached out to me and was like, "Mag, this job was like literally written for you." And I remember telling him, I was like, "Man, I've never had a job before." And he was like, "Dude, just submit your application." And I sent over my resume, or like my attempt to a resume. And I remember like the following week, it was you and Troy, Abby, and Maggie. We were at Ward 4, and I remember Joe looking at the resume and saying, "This is the first time I saw a resume with a curse word."
Ah,
And it was
pro
a track
tip, pro
and a
tip.
song that I had produced that had a curse word in it. But yeah, I then worked at Generator for almost 5 years. So I essentially got hired to build or co-build the music program with you guys, and had a lot of fun. Got exposed to a whole new world of venture capital and startups, which was super exciting. I think in many ways I was more excited about that than the music stuff. And then end of 21, I pitched you and Joe on this idea that is now Even, and you guys were crazy enough to say, "Matt, you should go build it." As I tell the story, it's like, I think it was like 2 days after Christmas. We were grabbing breakfast at, was it Cafe Hollander?
Hollander in the Wauwatosa Village. I remember because it was, COVID times and they had like one of those tents with a little heater inside. That's where we met.
Yeah, and I remember I was like, I think I first sent like a one pager to Joe, and I remember Joe telling me like, turn this into a deck, because it was just like a lot of thoughts, and I turned it into a deck, and then I shared it with both you and Joe, and I think while we were grabbing breakfast, Joe was like, "All right, man, we'll give you the 100K and like go figure it out," and you were like, "Hold on, Joe, let's figure out the specifics first." And yeah, I think 2 months after that, I started building, or at least like my attempt to building. And then we launched officially our MVP October of 22. And for context, Even is a direct to fan platform. So we partner with labels, distributors, and we help them empower their artists to sell their music directly to fans before it goes to streaming platforms. So think of us like the movie theater premiere for an album is Spotify was Netflix, essentially. So it's not replacing streaming, it's more designed to help artists monetize and own the relationship with their fans before they release on streaming platforms. And there's a long list of why artists want to do this, but it all really starts with the fact that artists aren't making enough money from streaming. So, yeah, that's essentially what we do. We officially launched out of beta 17 months ago. And now we're growing and scaling as a business, and having tons of fun along the way. That was
I
a
love it.
super long intro about who I am, what I do,
That's
but
great. I
a lot
mean,
of
I
great.
think what makes Meg special is, in many respects, he's like a two-time Generator alum, both a team member and employee at the company, helped start our Backline Music Accelerator with 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, which eventually became Generator Music, and now as a startup founder, a portfolio company that we've invested in. So full circle.
Full circle. I mean, it was, I think someone asked me recently, they're like, "Man, you went to Generator, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, for like 5 years." So The funny thing is I actually never went through an accelerator. I think my accelerator was just having access to everyone. I remember when we launched our MVP, I you guys gave me permission to message every single one of the employees so they can use their card and buy a release.
Yeah, I remember we did like a little COVID promotion where we're like, buy music from your favorite artist on here. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Not everyone responded though. I felt like it was going to be such an easy thing. I think I got like 60 people to do it at Generator.
It's your first reality dose of human behavior.
Literally.
Yeah. All right. Where are you located? When you think of even, where's even located in, even if that's multiple places?
It's multiple places. So, I always tell folks, even as a Milwaukee headquartered company, although I think press and like just like industry always ties us to either New York or LA. I've had a unique experience with Even where when I launched Even, our MVP at least, I was in LA. And then when we launched out of beta, I was in New York. Now I spend my time between Milwaukee, New York, and LA. So it's kind of an interesting hybrid, but I think the thing that makes Even so special is our staff. We have folks across 14 countries. So only 7 of us are in the US. The rest of the team is spread across Latin, Africa, and now we have our first set of folks in Europe. And this is mostly due to the fact that our artists are spread across so many countries. We have artists in 110 countries at the
Wow.
moment, which is a lot, but it also is really a core part of how we built the product. Our bet is in globalization. It's really on this focus on global and global digital experiences. So having folks from different parts of the world be able to be invested and ask those questions around like, hey, well, I live in Brazil. Why don't we support this payment method? Or I live in Nigeria. Why don't we support this mobile carrier? And these are those questions that I think often are neglected, especially in the startup space where like all you're trying to do is just like launch really fast and get in front of customers. We've had the luxury of having customers before we had a product. So I think for us, it's really about having those folks that can really focus on building this global product that can serve these global artists, but I think more importantly, a global fan base. Fans are global, especially with social media. So supporting some of these currencies and these payment methods are so integral to our relationship with our partners because if an artist says, all right, yes, I have a bunch of fans in the US, but what about all my fans in South Africa? That can be the deciding factor on whether or not they use the platform or not, because they don't want to end up on Twitter with a bunch of fans saying, "Oh, you don't support,
Yeah.
elections in South Africa." So, yeah, it's required us to really stretch our infrastructure in ways where we have to serve, these wide audiences, but it's made the product so much stronger in the past 17 months alone. So, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about all the like localization issues, especially when it comes to payments that might be nuanced or unique to those different continents or countries. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the luxury right now is that we get to grow with some of the biggest growing companies on the planet, where we think about Stripe, for example, even would not be able to exist today if it wasn't for Stripe. And, Stripe has been around for a while, but their product is still growing every single day, where every single month we get a notification for a new currency and a new payment method. Us reaching out to like our direct point of contact of like, hey, can you guys support this currency or this payment method? And now they're embracing crypto as well, which wasn't the case even 5 years ago. So being able to, support USDC, will officially be rolling out USDC Q1 of next year. And this is primarily tied to like events, blockchain elements, which we could talk about if you would like, but we'll be introducing USDC payouts, where that will give us access to an additional 40 countries that we currently can't support to pay creators. And, being able to support that now through these like stable coins, which again, like 4 years ago, me and you would have conversations around crypto and it's like it was still so new, but now global consumers are really adopting it and are excited about, USDC, for example. So yeah.
I like it. When you think about location, why Milwaukee?
I think the obvious piece that always sticks with me when we talk to folks, it's really interesting because when I hire folks in the company, I've been able to attract like just good people. And one of the it was really interesting. We got a screenshot of a text thread that they sent us earlier. There was a panel happening in LA for this like music conference, and somebody on stage said they used even as an example of a team that was very human and very like good people first, which is very rare in music. And I think a lot of that was tied to like just how I came up, the partners that I work with, you working with gener8tor, working with the 80 and 9 folks. I think every step of the way, we lead with this idea of like just being good humans. Um, and you don't see that in the coast. Like I find myself talking to like VCs or even like institutions, bankers, I mean, you name it. And there's this very like rigid approach to doing business that doesn't start with like at a human level first. And I've always, I've always at least saw it as a weakness where it's like, man, I wish I was more of a shark. Maybe I'm a little too soft. But I think it's ultimately a superpower that I think folks from the Midwest have, where we can lead with integrity, we can lead with being good people. Yes, we're gonna run into sharks that might try to take advantage of us, and we can deal with those elements. It doesn't mean that we can't stand up for ourselves, but at least from my experience, like founders in the Midwest are very just like down to earth, good people. Which again, maybe I've taken for granted just like being here most of my life. Um, but it's very rare in the coast. I don't know if you've seen that at least from your experience.
Yeah, I like how you frame it as a superpower. And I never think of like the Milwaukee superpower as this combination of humility and grit and some of these other factors. But I definitely think there's truth to that, and I completely acknowledge that there's just a difference of personality type between that and what you experience on the coast. And obviously you and I must have a liking for it. Certainly perhaps we're biased, having grown up here, but um, we choose to stay here too. So I think that's worth something, right?
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's so much it's embedded in our culture. Like just as simple as like the ope. I feel like it's a meme in the Midwest of like,
Yeah.
but in many ways it's like a courteous thing, right? Like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like we're very much like making sure that people are okay. But yeah, I mean, we just brought in our COO and she is a New Yorker true and true. And she tells me all the time, like, Mag, I'm not gonna call you soft, but like you should be a little bit more rigid with some folks.
Oh, yeah.
But that's why we brought her
Yeah,
in,
you
right?
compliment yourself with that. Yeah. All right, give us a little bit more sense of the timeline. So when was your time at gener8tor when you were doing the music work at gener8tor, and then when did you spin out and start even?
So I started at gener8tor June of 2018. Yeah. And then we started the music program in Milwaukee. And then very quickly that turned into the Detroit program. Um, and then at that point, I became the managing director like a year and a half, 2 years into it, under Abby's guidance, of course. And we then launched Cleveland.
Hmm.
That was that order, right? We did Milwaukee,
Yep, that's
Detroit,
right.
Cleveland. The pandemic hit, and that was crazy. I
Hmm.
remember gener8tor was like, I think I was employee like number 12, and that was including you and Joe. So I remember the company was like in a small office at Ward 4. And then next thing you know, I was like 100 people. And I'm like, where did all these people come from? And I think right around the time I left gener8tor to build even, you guys hosted the yearly like conference retreat
Yeah.
in Madison. And it was like in a ballroom. And I'm like, where did all these people come from? Um, so yeah, I was there. We grew, pandemic hit. I remember the program turned virtual. We launched the music tech program with UMG. And that was when I started getting like my feet wet into like the music tech stuff. Worked really closely with Adrian at the time. And it was really interesting because I used that as an opportunity. I recently caught up with her. I think it was like maybe a year and a half ago.
Nice.
And I remember mentioning it to her. I was like, I remember during that time, I would go to her because I was so curious about just tech and it felt like an opportunity for me to like dive into it. And she was so curious about music. So it was me helping her, her helping me. Which reminds me, I should probably reach out to her soon. But um, and then yeah, summer of 21 is when like the idea of even really started to spark, which I always credit you and Joe for, because I think for a year even before, I think in 2020 is when you guys started planting seeds of like there has to be something here. Like what would a business look like around this outside of the accelerator? Um, and I think that's what ultimately turned into even. I think my memory is a little blurred just from like that period of time, but I think that's how it all came
Yeah,
together.
I think we were generally brainstorming just because we had the music tech program, we had the program for artists themselves, and we were just like, man, there has to be some intersection, based on the learnings and expertise and network that we all collectively have here from that.
I just remember there was a conversation that me, you, and Joe had around that time where it was like you guys had asked me how what I thought about the startups that we were working with the UMG program. And I was like, man, these are great founders, but I think they're going to struggle to get traction. And I think I had listed like that because I remember I just saw the like pages with like notes that I had shared with Joe recently. And one of the things that I talked about was like, you can't replace streaming because Spotify's already too big. You can't replace discovery because you're never going to beat social media. And onboarding artists one by one is going to be too expensive and not truly venture scalable. Um, and that was around the time that I think you guys were like, all right, well, how would you do it? And I think that's when like the idea of even emerged. I was actually talking about this recently too with one of our new like label distro partners where when I first started building even, I don't know if you remember this, the goal was for me to like build the idea and then find a founder for it. And I think that was like the idea of the studio model where
Yeah, interesting.
I I think
And then you became the founder.
I
You,
became the
yeah,
founder, but it never felt like a ton of pressure.
yeah.
It was like I'm building this thing and I'm gonna find a founder and then I'm gonna go back to doing my job. But it was funny that like along the way, I ended up becoming the founder and the
Good
CEO.
memory. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
crazy time.
normally I ask, how did the accelerator help you the most? But let's broaden it. Just how did generator help you the most when you think back at it?
I mean, I would have never been exposed to this world. Like if I look at my life before generator, I can't pinpoint any possibilities that would have taken me into like venture and tech. I didn't know what venture capital was until like my first week at Generator.
Mhm.
It took all of that exposure. Somebody asked me recently, they're like, "Man, you're like a testament that you can do it, right? Like you can, come from a different background and not go to college and do those things." Like, and I was like, yes, but at the same time, like the amount of luck that had to go into that, where like who would have thought I would have met Joe and Troy and Abby and Maggie, and they would have been like, yeah, let's take a shot on this guy. And then it turns into me working at this company. Also, like, in many ways, you guys were a venture firm. And like the fact that you guys lasted this long is already an anomaly. So I think there was a lot of luck that had to go into play. Um, but I think, that's luck that I credit Generator to. A lot of the work, all my investors up until literally this year we're all folks that came from the generator background. And I mean, this was the cheat code, right? Like if you can walk around with like, I came up playing Grand Theft Auto, right? And like you would go and get the cheat code books. Like this was the cheat code that, offered me literally, I have a 24/7 hotline via text thread with you and Joe, which I often forget that is that people don't have that. Like I'll talk to other founders and they'll be like, yo, I don't have that like relationship with my investors. Um, so yeah, again, and I'm not saying this to talk you guys up. Like I would for sure give you guys shit if it wasn't anything. But like this has been a cheat code and you guys are
I
accessible.
love
At
it.
least
I
with me, you
appreciate
guys
it.
have been extremely accessible every step of the way. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
that
No,
hopefully that
it's really kind of you, and I appreciate hearing that. And I think speaking for Joe, we have fun just texting with you, and whether it's you sharing awesome updates on the company, or asking for advice, or us asking you of things, we appreciate the banter.
yeah. No, it's
What
great stuff. I
what
mean,
having been on both sides now, both working at Generator and having an investment from Generator as an accelerator, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs or founders that are considering an accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I've seen so much of it just because I still participate in I've been doing a good amount of like lightning rounds for some of the generator staff. And you know, I and I mean this in the nicest way possible, but like you can tell very quickly who has it. Uh, and so much of it is it's not about like how good the deck is. It's not good about like how good the presentation is. I've noticed the trend among the best founders that I've interfaced with, at least at Generator, and then when I go out into the world and meet other incredible founders, they share one like theme or common thread, I should say, which is they all are okay asking for help and they're relentless in asking for help. Like they are not embarrassed. There is no shame. It's an email on a Sunday. Hey, Mag, I see you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. Would you mind making an introduction? Um, hey Mag, I'm trying to, make a decision on this thing. Can you share some info on it? Um, every time I feel like I'm not saying every great founder does that, but I'm saying the great founders that I at least have like interfaced with do that. And it also doesn't mean that if you do that, you're going to be a highly successful founder on that startup. It just means that your possibilities, because there is so much luck required to like ultimately be successful in this space, your chances are only getting higher and higher if you ask for help. And yeah, I mean, there's folks that like, you know, I'll use this example from the time that I was running the accelerator. His name is Ogo. Ogo was a manager of an artist at the time. He went by the name Bravo, and now he goes by Felix Ames. Um, Ogo used to text me and call me almost every single day, Monday through Sunday, during this 12-week accelerator. Uh, Even post accelerator used to hit me all the time, asking for feedback, asking questions. 2 years later, he launches his own TikTok agency at the early stages of TikTok. Now he has one of the biggest TikTok agencies in the world, and he's an even investor. I went from mentoring this guy to now him being an investor of even. And that to me, like I can go back and pinpoint those examples. And then of course, there's other artists like Felix Ames went on to be very successful as well. But yeah, I can really, remember those touch points of like this person's going to be incredible at whatever they do. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's like it just comes down to this make your own luck more than anything. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
What tell us about your favorite part of Generator or perhaps the favorite connection you made as a result of Generator.
Um, man, let's see. It's great. It happens every day almost. Like there ends up being a connection point, not every day, but let's say like every week. For example, I recently got breakfast with Nick Osborne at UMG. And I remember that was one of the first people that I met at UMG when we were running the program. So it's crazy to see that someone, one, he's still there, he's in a higher position in leadership. And he remembers Generator and like the name of Generator still holds so much weight in that building. And I think, I remember texting you guys that but I think as far as like my favorite person, my favorite, I put them into together, but they're two individuals. I'll say Jennifer and Raquel.
Yeah.
Love them. Some of my favorite people I've ever met. I recently wrote them a reference letter that they requested, and I sat on it for a whole week because I'm like, this might be too emotional of a letter. And I shared it with them, and they're like, no, this is great. But yeah, I think, it's interesting because I have, in my mind, I have Joe and Troy, and then I have Raquel and Jennifer. And I see you guys very, very much equal, but I go to you guys for two completely different things, but very similar. Always available. I can text them anytime. They give me great feedback. And it's just another group of folks that I met along the way. They're not my biggest investors, but I would say their impact is very much felt. every single day whenever, again, when I need them for stuff. So yeah, I
Yeah.
would put them as like some of my favorite people that I've met. Of
So
course.
definitely shout out to VC414,
These people.
Jennifer and Raquel, the GPs there. Who of the four of us, who speaks the best Spanish?
I had to think about that for a second. Raquel, come on, Raquel.
Come on. All right, my last question, and this is really in line with something you said before, which was the best entrepreneurs you come across are not afraid to ask for help. So the last question I always ask in each of these interviews is, if you, Meg, had one ask for this audience, maybe it's an introduction, an investor intro, just general advice, what would that ask be?
Um, like for me, like help that I'm looking for
For
today.
you or for the company, however you want to frame it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I think this is more of a general like thought of anything, but I always tell folks like as a society we've undervalued art, and it's become so accessible in our everyday life that you know my recommendation is like if you love if there's a song that like has created memories in your life, go buy that album. If there's a piece of art that you love, like go buy a print. I think if as a society we need to remember what art means to us in our culture and cultures from around the world. So if there's ever an opportunity to buy the art from the artist, buy it directly, if not just buy art. And if you want to buy an album, go to Even. But I think it's really important to just remind people that like we all love music, we all love art. So let's make sure that we spend our dollars in that same direction. So
I love that. That's a great way to end it. Buy art from the artist. And if it happens to be an album on Even, check out the website in the description. Make sure to do it at Even. Meg, thank you so much. Meg Rodriguez, founder and CEO of Even. Congratulations on all the success thus far. If you haven't checked it all out already, make sure to check out the website again in the description and buy art from the artist. Thanks, Meg.
amazing. Thank you.